y'all. Today we are going to make a tree skirt with my newest Accuquilt cutter die. As you can see, this is a wedge piece, and so we'll use this, cut out a bunch of wedges, and make a new tree skirt. So let's get started.
In my continuing effort to use stash, I pulled 4 fabrics out. There's a pattern, and I'll link it down below. Accuquilt has a pattern for a tree skirt, and the cardboard that comes around the die when you purchase it has the information on what you need, and I'm gonna wing it, of course, but I will link the actual pattern down below. I have these 4 fabrics, super cute. This one is an old one from Joann's. This is a Kate Spade fabric from several years ago, and then these 2 are both Michael Miller fabrics from several years ago that I actually just picked up from my friend's tea stash.
Okay, it's a new day. Our wedges are cut. I am using 4 fabrics, so it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll make 5 big wedges by sewing these wedges together, and then those wedges will get sewn into a circle.
Sewed all of these into pairs. 1, 2, there's those first 5, and then sew those into pairs, and now I'm going to take these pairs and combine them with these, and then we'll have quads.
Okay, the pairs are now quads. Oh, they're so pretty. So now I'm going to sew the quads into octuplets. That's not right. Sets of 8. Let's do it.
Quads. So technically I did 2, these 2 together, and then these 3, and now we just have to sew this to make a whole circle, and hopefully it's not wonky.
Good morning. I am still in my pajamas. A tree skirt. It's on my ironing board. I need to now choose a backing and find my batting. I think it's in my closet. Find my batting and baste it, because now that you've sewn it into a full circle, it's time for quilting.
All right, before I take this downstairs to baste it, I wanted to see my thread options for quilting. I have a ton of thread, and I know I didn't want a red because there's already a lot going on with red. I feel like red pops out more than the green in my brain. So I wanted a green thread. So I have this 50 weight Aurifil. I have the Wonderfil Fabulux Neon. Then that 50 weight. I have more greens, but I feel like these were the good options. So I like this one. What you do, in case you're haven't done this before, instead of just holding the whole spool, unthread a length of it and then lay it across your quilt so you can kind of see how it looks across everything. And so I think I like this dark green the best. I love the neon, it matches these little bulbs really well, but I feel like it stands out so much against all the other fabrics that it just stands out more than I want it to. And then the same lime but not neon, this 50 weight Aurifil, again, I like it, but not as much as I like the deep green. So there's the 3 options. You can see the deep green just melts into these greens, and then pops off of the red. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this one. This is what I like to use for basting spray. It works really well and it washes out. Okay, wand a fresh bobbin, put on my walking foot, thread has been placed, and now I'm going to start quilting. Okay, got my quilt here on the bed of the machine because we were lucky enough to start with a circle in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quilt along the edge of the circle, and then I will pivot out, and then I'm just going to spiral my way all the way to the edge of the quilt. I think honestly that will be the fastest and probably easiest type of quilting that I feel like attempting at this point in time. One last thing, I do like to wear quilting gloves. I know some people only wear them when they're doing free motion quilting, but I like to wear them when I'm doing walking foot quilting as well, because it helps get a good grip on the quilt itself, to be able to better manipulate it through the machine as you're doing your quilting. So these are just basic Fons and Porter quilting gloves. I really like them because they're thin and they're not super bulky. Okay, so now that I've done a full circle, that honestly is really just like a basting stitch, because when we put binding, when we cut out this middle part and put binding, that's going to be covered. But I made it all the way back around and I actually back stitched here. And so now I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to shift the quilt slightly so that I can angle off of this circle until the edge of my foot then lines up with this stitching, and then that will be my spacing guide for the remainder of the quilt. And one last thing I did not mention is that on my Janome, you can lessen the presser foot tension, and I always lower it down to the lowest so you don't get drag on your quilt when you're quilting. Different angle. We're getting all the angles of all the parts of my room. Okay, so quilting is done. I used 3 bobbins. I always forget that like spiral quilting uses so much more thread. But now you have to chop it up. Not chop it up, but the next step is you have to cut out the center and decide which wedge you're gonna slice so that you can have the, so the tree skirt can do the open thing. So that's what's next. Okay, so now the scary part, because you get to slice into all your hard work. So I think the best way to do that is probably with a rotary cutter. Spread this out, grab your ruler, and the pattern that I briefly referenced suggests slicing through the middle of one of your wedges, not through a seam, which makes sense. You don't want the whole thing to like come apart at the seams. So we're just gonna, how wide is this? 6 3/4. So that much. So eyeball it, make sure we're slicing down the middle. That's about right. Hold your breath and slice. Okay. Whew. There she is. Now, we're gonna cut that circle. Listen, I have no idea if I did this properly, because the instructions just tell you to cut a 26-inch square, which is what this is, placed diagonally on blades, and cut bias strips. Now, could I look this up? Yes, I could. But again, like I said at the beginning, we're winging it. So we're gonna try this weird folded thing that I did, and if it works, we're good. And if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. All right,
well, it did work. This is like the very edge, and as you can see, it is biasy and stretchy. And so that's just a scrap that was on the edge. But we have all of these bias strips, and we'll sew them together. Okay, so we are almost done. I have the binding sewn all the way around. The reason you want to use bias binding for this type of project is because it needs to have that stretch that you get when you cut fabric on the bias. Because you're working with a curve, this needs to properly stretch around so that when you can sew it down. Because if you just had straight grain binding, you would be fighting it the whole time because it's not going to stretch like you need it to. And especially like sewing this circle in the middle, you need that stretch to get it around, or else it's just a nightmare. So I'm going to hand sew this on, and then we are done and ready to put it under the tree.